I can't explain to you how the uncaused self makes decisions.
This is only a short edited clip from about an hour-long video. So Ben made this statement you have just heard early on in the debate. The next clip I am going to show you is of the other guy, Alex, who looks like he has just discovered the Matrix and does not like what he sees, who challenges Ben with some very hard questions.
This was a liberalizing force, and even if this was not as bad as other slaves of the Hebrew Bible, are immoral.
Yes.
So how do you account for God commanding something immoral?
To do something
immoral.
That in the time was not considered immoral.
It wasn't considered immoral,
right.
But was it immoral?
By today's standards that were developed by the Judeo-Christian tradition, sure. By today's standards developed under the Judeo-Christian tradition, immoral.
Do you think that the ownership of other human beings under the conditions of the Hebrew Bible are immoral?
Yes, under the Judeo-Christian tradition, immoral. Which, by the way, you're living off the. You're again, not to get back to the Town Holland argument. You're living off the remains of this. I mean, where's your morality coming from?
But who's the moral relativist now? I mean, it seems that a moment ago you say that the great success of religion is providing a sort of untouchable moral basis that sort of trans human affairs and human debates. And now when I say, well, look at this, open your own religious scripture and look at this blatant immorality, you say, yeah, but well, that was considered to be fine at the time. It's considered to be bad now by the progress of Judeo-Christian
There's a question.
Who's the moral relativist?
Well, it's not relativistic to say that a thing that is wrong today is considered wrong today because of a tradition that developed over time.
The question I'm asking is not, was it considered right or wrong at the time of biblical slavery?
It was wrong.
Was it wrong?
It was wrong then to hold a slave. Yes, it was wrong then to hold a slave, obviously. And also, if you are God and you are pragmatically attempting to woo people away from slavery, was it a practicable thing to simply, quote-unquote, abolish slavery? Or
here's an option. Would it not be? It doesn't seem to me particularly revolutionary. It doesn't seem to me the kind of thing that would have caused such social discohesion that God just couldn't have found a way to do it.
Idea,
for example, in the book of Exodus, God says, I think in chapter 21, maybe 22, it says that if you have a Hebrew slave, you are to let them go after 7 years. If that Hebrew slave comes to you with a wife, then after the 7 years, you let them go too. If you give the Hebrew slave a wife and they have children, then after those 7 years are up, you give the man a choice. He can go after the 7 years, as per, but you keep his children and his wife. Or, and here the scripture says, if he says, I love my wife, I love my kids, and my master, as if that's going to be one of the principal considerations, then he can stay with you, at which point you take him outside, you pierce his ear like cattle, and he becomes your property for life. Now, here's a suggestion, for example. If it was already established that Hebrew slaves go after 7 years, and it's already established that if they come with a wife, they can go after 7 years, then if I give them a wife and they have children, well, why not let the whole family go free after those 7 years? With the knowledge beforehand that if you give this Hebrew slave of yours a wife and children, they'll get to leave with them. That seems to me, for example, a minor improvement that would not cause this kind of revolutionary earth-shifting, he couldn't have just gotten away with slavery. Maybe that's true. But something as obvious as this to me, it seems that if that is the case, that could have easily been done, then the failure to do so and the...
With your premises, I agree with your conclusion. I think that the question as to how much social discohesion would it have caused to do a thing is an open question. I think the other question that sort of remains open here is the incentive structure as to whether you accept a wife from your master. Right, so I don't want to get into the abstruse. I mean, we can do this literally all day. And there's 70 volumes of the Talmud that are literally about this sort of stuff, and then copious writings in terms of reinterpretation.
Yeah, we're hardly the first people to talk about this.
Yeah, exactly. This is not the first time these questions have come up. But I think the general point is sort of one where either we can dive into that full time and you can spend your life becoming a rabbi, which, enjoy.
Could happen.
You have the beard for it. It's your beard is further along than mine. Or we can sort of stipulate at the top that there are certain biblical interpretations that are abstruse and difficult, and that has been a reality of religious life since the beginning.
Well, I can agree with that.
So when Alex asks his broader question on slavery, Ben explains that taking into account that slavery was the norm at the time, it had to be diluted slowly out of society, and even though the Bible did not abolish slavery totally, it made some slight changes to allow the end result of abolishment. And that is exactly what happened. Then when Alex asks him a more specific point about slavery, Ben tries to use the same answer, but he himself quickly notices that in this instance it would be ridiculous to carry on. So then he backtracks and goes back to the statement you heard him say in the beginning, which he calls the escape hatch for people who believe in God. I cannot understand God, so you can't ask me any questions about him. So the question to you, Ben, is why try and explain God's motive and reason at all when trying to answer Alex? Obviously, the last thing to do, according to you, should be explaining God's motives and reasons in a way that we can understand it, because that contradicts the statement of not being able to understand God. So just stick to your escape hatch answer, which allows you, no matter how much evidence is brought against you, to escape facing intellectual honesty.